I'm up on the airplane and looking down over Italy. You look real close to the back, that's the end of the booth. It's peeking the island there. So that's what it looks like on my window. We're about 2 hours away from landing. Our first glimpse of Israel. This is a city that we see outside our hotel on the first night. We think it might be, what do we think? Kerem, where John the Baptist is kind of from, where Elizabeth and Mary met. So these are farming terraces just outside of Jerusalem.
Land of the Philistines in the Old Testament.
Looking out over the coastal plain.
And just people
Shabela.
of the world, let's say. That's the biblical picture of the coastal plain.
So this and these pictures have been of the Gezer Tell. So a whole bunch of civilizations have built up cities here. So this is the water source of the system in Gezer.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't see
So this is a manger.
lichens almost distort.
Okay, so this is looking out from the Tell of Gezer, and this is the Valley of Ilon. And looking up towards where you can kind of see the smoke off that way is where Jerusalem would be. So this is a main, on the Via Maris, the main trade route to get up, and where the sun stood still for Joshua. So these are high place stones that were set up by the Canaanites, and there's an altar there. And this would have been the high place of the Canaanite period. The Tell's built up over it, but it's been, you can see it from the Via Maris, the major trade route. And they would want to say, oh, my God did something here, and then they'd ask about what are those stones for, and they would tell them the story. But 1 Peter 2, where it said we're living stones. These are dead stones. They can't tell if there's nobody there. But we're living stones. We can tell God's story in the place of influence. So this is the Sorek Valley where Samson grew up. This is over there, that city is Zorah. And then over here, kind of where you can see the granary place over there, that is Eshtaol. So he grew up in between Zorah and Eshtaol, and that's where he's buried too, somewhere in here. And then these are the wheat fields down here in the valley that he put the foxes through, their tails. And the hill right over there, that is Timnah, the Valley of Timnah, where he put the first girl that he went to marry. And then you can see on the way there is where the lions and there's the fields there. And then there's the valley here is where Delilah. And then if you look farther out, is the coastal plain where the Philistines lived, and of course they came up this far in the Valley of Timnah, Shabela. And then over here is where he took the gates off the city, and he carried them way over there, just over the ridge, just where the city was. Took the gates off there, all the way from where I'm standing, all the way up into mountains to Hebron. Alright, this is looking down the Elah Valley where David fought Goliath. This is the stream, or where the brook is. We're going to go down there in a minute. That's the brook where he probably got the stones. These are probably where the Israelites were camped, right here on this hill, because right past there you can see the Judean mountains where they were. And then on this, so there's down where the valley is. And over on this side is probably where the Philistines were camped on this hill, going towards Gath, which was towards the coastal plain by the Mediterranean.
put things in perspective.
So this is the brook in the Elah Valley where David got the stones and then went and fought Goliath. This is part of the brook. This is the carob tree. They would feed these pods to the pigs because they were kind of sugary. And it would make the pigs nice and fat and juicy. And that's what the prodigal son probably wanted to eat. Alright, this is an olive tree. They kind of look silvery white a little bit. And they would have leaves and some little green olives. So this is the fig tree. Adam and Eve used these leaves to make coverings for themselves. Fig trees. Alright, this is an almond tree. This is Tel Maresha, and they built it in the ground, so it's cooler, so it's inside, and possibly where Micah was from. So these are pigeon holes. They raise pigeons for eating, sacrificing, manure, that sort of thing. This is all underground. Okay, this is a Get Shemen, which is where we get the word Gethsemane, and it's an olive press that they do underground so it stays cool for doing the olives. And a lot of times they'd rent these out during Passover and other times. So Jesus may have been staying in one of these with his disciples. And then if you look over this way, is the big rock.
Team will appreciate that.
Is do the press. Alright, this isn't a big biblical significance place, but it's a cool bell cave. So there's caves mentioned in the Bible, different places. Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. This is in the distance is the city of Hebron. That's where Abraham lived. It's also where when Sarah died, he bought a cave there and buried her there. And this here is the fortress of Arad, and that's what we're going to go into right now and be able to see. This was kind of what the landscape would have looked like, minus the bus and the road. Around the time of Abraham. The fortress here is from Hezekiah's time that I just showed. And then there were nomadic people and sheep out here, and they wouldn't have their sheep a lot of times in the Shephelah because that was the good area for farming. But out here it wasn't good for farming, so because it doesn't rain, so they would use this more for sheep. So this is looking over this as part of the ruins of the Canaanite city of Arad that they've discovered here. So you can see we're looking at the fortress, looking down at the city. And then the fortress was also not just where they defended, but there's a temple here that they found that we will look at. So this is looking out again from the fortress, and these Bedouin people, there's kind of each family has their own little group of home, and this is a grazing area. This is where they would have the sheep, and there's actually, like you can see it, I don't know when I got some pictures of it, a shepherd down there with some of his sheep, and it doesn't look real lush here, but apparently this is very lush area for the desert. So we'll see. I guess we're going to go into another spot later that's not quite as nice as this. So we'll see. There's a little wind tornado there in the desert. don't know if you can
Wow,
see it
that's
super well.
crazy.
Bunny.
It's pretty cool.
Dust devil.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it's a dust devil.
This is looking over the city of Arad. The city of Arad was originally Canaanite, and when the Israelites came, they conquered it from them, and the fortress and the temple would have been built by the Israelites. There's some areas down here that they're uncovering, and then you can see even over here. This is 3,000 or more years ago. This is from.
Should I try to video it?
So this is down in the Canaanite village there, and this is one of their altars. This would have been an altar to Baal, and then I'm guessing fire pit to burn, sacrifice. And then up there is where we just were, the fortress where the Israelite temple was. When the Israelites took over, they built this fortress. This is at Arad. So this is a pomegranate tree. This is Advat Canyon.
Something that have fallen here. Now turn
This
around.
limestone, you can see some of that.
We're going to be walking up next to this spring, so
Where
down
water
below
came
you
from
see
the
some
rock.
water that's here all the time. And I don't know, where did Israel wander? This wilderness.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people. Where'd they get their water from? Some say that places like this wadi were places they may have come down to. And when we go up, we're going to be going up some of the ancient steps that were original. You'll see some that aren't original in part of it, because it's a safe way up now. But at that time, you're going to be perhaps in a similar place to where Israelite women came down to get water from time to time for their families. So kind of an interesting place. And there's pools all the way up. And you can see obviously where are the bushes and shrubs growing. Okay, they're growing down by where the water would be.
Okay, so we're climbing up. We still have more to go. But you can see we started down there. You can see some people. And then here's our group coming up. We're still climbing. So then we got to go up this ladder thing. You can maybe see people going up. So, woohoo! Alright, so this is the fortress at Avdat. I might have said it wrong earlier. It's A-V-D-A-T. Avdat. This is where we were in the canyon first. Now this is the fortress on top of a hill. It was part of the spice route leading over to Gaza. Okay, so this is the wine press.
Does anyone have sunscreen with them?
And they would stomp the grapes and they would go down in this hole. I should go the other way. It would go down into this hole, and then it would have a thing that would run in here. And it comes out down below and then drains into there, into the vat.
In the time of Jesus and the crucifixion, what happened here? We read it a little. What were some of the things that happened here? Pilate is judging. People are gathered. Okay? Jewish people come to make a case. Where are they? They here? Any clue? What's that? They're on the sides here? When was Jesus crucified? What was the festival?
Passover.
Would a Jew be in here? No. Well, that's one of the things that's quite interesting, and we're going to do something in just a minute that will kind of emphasize that point. But think about that. If the Jews weren't in here, where were they? Because you see, the chief priests were there to make accusation, right? How do they make accusation to Caesar unless they're in here? But they have a problem. For Passover, they have to make the sacrifices. They have to be clean. A Jew can't come into the Roman court and be clean. This is Gentile area.
Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify
imagine this being covered and hearing that noise and having about 10 times, 50 times that many people shouting that from out there. Trade places.
So this would have been where, like a place like Pilate would have sat. Of course he was in Jerusalem, but right down here would be the Baas, and there would be the set where somebody accused would stand. And then over here there would have been a pole somewhere over that way for the floggings to happen over there. And then the Jewish leaders actually wouldn't have come in here at the time because it was Passover week and it was unholy. So they would have been standing outside shouting.
Smile, Pilate?
So soldiers had spaces they would live in the walls of the Praetorium. This is like one of those that's been found. This is from the Roman times, Jesus time period. So this is a canyon that our guide showed us. There's 3 of these, and they have different mineral stores. The different layers that you can kind of see coloring are different minerals. Yeah, all the way out there. All right, this is our first look at the Judean wilderness. So these are the paths of righteousness talked about in Psalm 23. The paths that go back and forth along the straight paths that go back and forth along the hill. So here's the beginning of the Judean wilderness, but the way back there, the water you can see is actually the Dead Sea. So this is our view of Masada from the wilderness. And the Rift Valley beyond. Alright, so this is Masada again. And then the mountains behind here, across there are Jordan, which would have been Moab. Okay, this is the top looking down from Masada. You can see distance there the Roman encampment where the Romans stayed for 2 years while they were trying to lay siege to this fortress. That's when the Zealots owned it and were staying here, and they were kind of a thorn in the flesh to Caesar, so he wanted to get rid of them. So Herod's the one that built this first, but after he died it kind of went into disrepair and nobody really went after it until the Zealots came up here.
Would you raise your hand? Where Sue's looking, you see this? That's the bathroom. Mosaic floor. Herod the Great's bathtub on the right. Did you get that? Herod the Great's, no, where Lori is. In that one, you see it on the right-hand side of the wall. Okay? See, she's back here too far over to see it. It's right up the wall. And then that spot that looks like a toilet without a hole was considered to be some construction for a toilet. Whether it was raised up a little or I don't know. It kind of looks like, I'm not sure I want to use it the way it is right now. But something there. Anyway, that's that. And then of course another mosaic over here is another mosaic of a larger room. Just a channel. So those are really the 3 reasons we brought you over to the Western Palace.
So everything would have been
other than to see
plastered and
again, everything in here would have been plastered. You see where the Yadin line is? Everything above it is reconstructed.
So this is reconstructed.
And this is kind of the way it goes. Below that is original, and then where it looks exactly the same as below it, it's reconstructed to look the way it was. And then here's an example where above what looks like the way it was, it almost looks more modern.
So this was Herod's version of a columbarium, which is the dove house.
Oh, you were probably captured from another country.
How they used it for eating manure and that sort of thing.
And in here, when they uncovered this, they found a scroll, part of the book of Ezekiel. Okay. And that became part of what we would call the Dead Sea Scrolls. So some of the Dead Sea Scrolls were found here at Masada. And here, what they've set up is a scroll writer, a scribe, who was copying as they would have then, copying, I don't know which section he's working on, copying the Word of God onto a scroll. And so he's got his copy that he's working off of in one hand, and very painstakingly is writing out the very Word of God on the scroll. You're welcome to take pictures and all that. And in the corner is what the scrolls end up kind of looking like that you would find in a synagogue. A little bit bigger than our Bible that the preacher reads out of.
Is this what they would keep it in?
They would keep it in a Torah closet. Oh, you mean the metal thing? Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. And they would keep it in a Torah closet, and we're probably about where the Torah closet was in the synagogue. That's probably why they put him back here.
Now, this is to depict wadi. It's also to depict the water channels that were created and engineered to bring water into the cisterns. So all of it didn't go in, but watch how some of it gets diverted. And we'll do this a few times, so if you see it once, see how it goes in the water channel, down into the cisterns, some up above, of course led down to the Dead Sea. So Herod engineered this channel system to bring water into his cisterns. That's what you saw if you walk down below, and that's what you can see now. One more for this group, then we'll bring the rest of you up who haven't seen it yet. Notice now a little water fell on the other side, a different wadi, and that came into the upper cistern. So we've got both going here.
Cool.
All engineered.
I've never seen those.
There's three stages the cold dip room of the Roman bathhouse.
The one over here is like the really cool dip. Like I don't know if you've been to the gym and had that like really cool
which is just normal, and it has all these frescoes and colors. It would have been
There's
beautiful.
the cold room there, and this is kind of like the...
And this would have been the hot rooms over here. Alright, so this is actually the sauna room, not the hot tub room. It had the heat underneath, it would have been covered. And then they had the pipes that would do the steam up, and it was domed, so it would fall back down. This is the model of the palace, so we were up top, here high. The middle one's where I think his favorite wife Miriam was buried. This is the acacia tree, or an engedi. This is an acacia tree, and that's what they made the Ark of the Covenant out of, and also has the thorns that might have been used for Jesus. Back on the walking, hopefully you can see them.
Can't you see the ibex in that picture?
I know, it's hard to tell where they are.
You gotta have the horns, then you can at least tell. Everything else blends so well. Cool.
This person could have.
Oh my god. Oh.
Camel here.
Oh, he's gonna throw a rock. He just picked one up.
Typical Americans, you never get enough. Now you want more camels.
Okay, so we're in Qumran right now. Qumran is the area where the Essenes lived and wrote scrolls and things, and this is the area where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And Qumran is from the plural, it actually means like ark or cave. So, see some of the different caves in there. So this is the ritual bath in mikvah, and you actually have steps that would lead down in. Most of the water was from cisterns, but needed to have some living water in it into biblical times. And the Essenes used it twice a day, anytime they copied scripture. But really you needed it like if you take a touch an unclean, something unclean, or it wasn't really a sin thing, it was just cleansing. So this is looking over the Essene community, and probably this area was the library. When the Romans came to attack, there's the thought that they hid the scrolls and the pots in the caves nearby to protect them from the Romans. Yeah. Okay, this is overlooking Jericho from the roof of the restaurant we ate lunch in. This is one of Herod's palaces, another one of the 7 that he had. And then you can just look out over the town of Jericho. Jericho is the oldest city in the world. They say 10,000 BC, is that what they said? And the hottest city in the world and the lowest city in the world. So it's 3 claims to fame. It's also where Joshua through the battle, and also has a good, they have a lot of sycamore trees, and this is where Zacchaeus' story took place. Alright, so these are what might have been some of the walls of Jericho that were uncovered. But Jericho has been rebuilt 27 times, I think. So it's hard to know for sure. But that's what they think. Okay, so we are looking over the Sea of Galilee. It's very windy. We're on top of Mount Arbel, looking over top of the sea. Okay, so this is Mount Arbel, where we took the pictures. I think we were right up on that cliff there. We took the pictures of the overviews. The Sea of Galilee, that's Tiberias. This is looking to the south. And then I'm on a pier here, so this is over, obviously, with sunrise to the east. We just watched the sunrise. That's where the Decapolis area was over there. And then over this way is the triangle cities of Bethsaida and Capernaum and I forget the third one. And then looking back this way to Magdala over back here, and then this is actually where we're staying. Beautiful, beautiful morning. Beautiful place. I can see why Jesus wanted to be here and spend lots of time here. I believe this really tall, straight pine is the cedar of Lebanon. Okay, so now we are in, we're at Gamla, old city of Gamla, and this is an area that is in the Golan Heights. It used to be Syria, and Israel took it back from Syria in the 6-Day War. Syria really wants it back, but it's the high ground, and it's also part of the 3 of the 5 sources of the Sea of Galilee running in this area, so they don't really want to give it up, which makes sense. So these are all going to be Gamla. So this was a 1st century synagogue where Jesus actually came. So that was the mikvah just back there. You can see the chief seats there, the pillars that would have held it up.
After you look at the mikvah, you see the mikvah, then just come on in here, please.
Chief seats around, and the bema in the middle. This is in Gamla. Alright, this is the Torah closet. And it would have been brought down here, and then stand over at the bema. Just there, where all the people would have stood for the reading. Okay, so we hiked down this canyon where you see people coming up all the way around, all the way down to past that cliff where you can see this. You can't see, there's a service road. Then we walked all the way up, saw where the temple or synagogue was, which was right there. Then I hiked up this. I didn't get quite all the way to the top, but probably right around there. So that was, and then we had to hike all the way back down, and then all the way back up. So it was quite a hike, and I made it. So this was the town of Susita, which was one of the Decapolis cities, very Hellenistic city. This is where Jesus was on his way here when the storm came up on the boat. He calmed it. It's also where the demon-possessed man came to him and he sent him into the herd of pigs. Alright, this is the Spring of Gideon. Beautiful. Okay, so we're headed up the Tell of Bet Shan. This is where Saul and Jonathan's bodies were hung. This is what we're going to be seeing. So this is looking over the Hellenistic city of Bet Shan, and it's only 5% has been uncovered of this city. It was one of the Roman cities. You can see the main street there and all the pillars. There would have been temples there to their gods and goddesses. Dionysus is one that would have had a temple there. That's the theater. All the Roman cities had temples and theaters in order to spread their Hellenistic worldview. They also had arenas that's covered, but it's on one of the other hills. You can't really see it real well from here. It's on one of those other hills there. And then that's the gymnasium, and they would have done the education in the gymnasium. So it was a beautiful city even now, and at that time you could imagine it would have been beautiful when the disciples saw it. Alright, here's the theater. And the stage. And columns. Okay, on a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. There's our boat. It's a wooden boat.
Ready for some dinner.
Okay, so we're in Capernaum, and this is the sign they found. This was the Roman sign of the day, of Jesus' day. And this is where Jesus healed the servant of the Roman centurion. Okay, so these are millstones, and they were made out of the basalt volcanic rock.
Yep.
These were a main industry, manufacturing thing of Capernaum. And this is where Jesus said it'd be better for you to have one of these tied around your neck and thrown into the abyss. This is pretty cool. It is the stone that was found in Capernaum, and it said it was made by, I think it was Alphaeus, who was in the family of, how we would say, Zebedee. Okay, so this is believed to be the house of Peter's mother-in-law, where Jesus stayed in Capernaum at times. So they would they'd actually have a house, and then when the son would get married, he would build on a room onto the house, and called an insula. And the dad would tell him when it was time, and the bride would be preparing, just like Jesus is preparing a place for us right now. They found fishing hooks in this place, and it's also across from they're near the synagogue, so they're pretty sure that this is the place. There's a church built on top of it, so I can kind of see that on there. This is the synagogue in Capernaum, and this whitish stone is built in the 4th century, but this basalt, kind of blackish stone here, that was actually the remains of the 1st century church there. They found coins and things when they've dug under, and know that that's the 1st century time, so that was actually the time and what it looked like in Jesus' day. This was the church synagogue that Jesus was in. You can see that this synagogue is bigger than the synagogue in Gamla. which said something about the religious people in this area and the amount of people that there were. This probably was on the synagogue because it has the menorah right on it. This pillar was probably from the synagogue. And then this stone has a representation of the temple on it, so that's pretty cool. And there's one down farther with the Star of David that I have a picture of. So this is one of the headwaters of the Jordan River. We're in Dan, which is the northernmost city in Israel. This is where the tribe was. Also was sometimes the first conquered if Syria or Lebanon now, Babylon came down from the north. It was conquered here. So it was an area where this is one of the headwaters. The waters come down from Mount Hermon. This water is flowing really fast.
What's that right up there?
This was the niche where they would have the
They
idols
had an
to
altar
Baal
out
and
there.
Asherah and the,
Yeah, that
right
would not
inside
be an
the
altar
city
to our
gate.
God. That would have been an altar to the, probably to the God of the city, perhaps required.
Ahab would have sat when he was here and held in court. Alright, so this would have been up on the top here where they would have put the golden calf. And the golden calf was small, like a small dog. It wasn't real big. And this would have been the altar. It was really big, where they would have had their sacrifices here. This is in the city of Dan. Jeroboam would have been doing this. So we're at the top of the high place of Dan, and across the way you can see into Lebanon. That city over there is Lebanon. So this is a way to one of the modern day bunkers here, because this is also the north point of Israel. So that city is actually half Israeli and half Lebanon. The UN came in and divided it up. And even though they wanted to stay all Israeli, they said no, part of it's Lebanon. There's some of that's Lebanon there, and then if you look over here, the first mountain you see, the first little hill is Israel, but the second one is headed into Syria again. And these are the foothills of Mount Hermon, which we hopefully can see way in the back. There's some clouds that you might be able to see. Alright, this is the ancient entrance to Dan, and this is where Abraham would have come when when Lot was taken and Abraham came with men to rescue him. He would have gone into this entrance of the city, and they're just starting to uncover the city. Okay, so this is Caesarea Philippi, and it was the center for the worship of the god of Pan, which was very evil, disgusting worship. In fact, that cave, which was where one of the mouth of the Jordan River at one time, was actually called the gates of hell because it was so evil here. This is where Jesus came to Peter on this rock over my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. Not being ashamed of the gospel. So we're on the hill of the Mount of Beatitudes.
It's also right above Taka, which is the setting of the loaves and fishes story. And then also in Scripture it often says Jesus went to solitary places to pray. Our bell is considered a solitary place by the rabbis, but this is also up a little bit, obviously, as you can see over the lake. This is another traditional setting for the place Jesus might have come to pray. Different place.
This is a mustard tree. And the seeds
Yeah,
are
go ahead.
super
It's okay.
small.
Yeah, go.
It's the green pod.
Sometimes these trees are 10 or 15.
So we're now in Nazareth. We are near Nazareth, looking over the Jezreel Valley. This hill over here is Mount Tabor. That's where the story of Deborah and Barak were. And then if you keep going, this hill where you can see the tower on top, This is the hill of Mora, and there's two cities on each side. One is Shunem, and one is Nain, one on each side of the hill. And Shunem is where Elisha raised the dead boy, and Nain is where Jesus raised a dead boy.
Interesting little non-biblical PS.
Okay, and then right past the hill of Mora is the Mount Gilboa, and Mount Gilboa is where King Saul and his sons died in battle, and between it runs the Harod Valley. And this right down here, the Harod Valley, is where the story of Gideon sorting out his army takes place. And then if you look down here, this is actually the Jezreel Valley. It's the most fertile land in the area. It's very, it has like almost 40 feet of topsoil. I mean, it's very fertile, and because of that, it's a key area in Israel. And actually coming down by where the Gideon story was, the Harod Valley ran a branch of the Via Maris. So you can see that. So that was a big major connection. And then if you keep going off this way, you can see a helicopter. And over this way, these hills over here are actually Mount Carmel. And Mount Carmel is kind of a ridge. That's of course where the story of there's, you can see it's kind of hazy today, so it's kind of hard to see. But that's where the story of Elijah takes place on Mount Carmel with Ahab. Just a side note, over this way was the village in those mountains over there of Megiddo. And Megiddo and Har is the word for hill. So Har Megiddo is where we get the word Armageddon. So this is a very fought over spot, and there's one more battle to come. And then if you keep going around, behind, there's Mount Carmel again, you keep going around, and it's the city of Nazareth. This is where Jesus grew up. This is a 1st century tomb. So this is inside the tomb. They would have different places for bodies to go.
I'm sure. What's down in there? Just another.
We are now at Caesarea on the Mediterranean. So this area was actually Herod's palace in Caesarea, and it was built, this is what we're looking at here is the swimming pool. It was built, this area was built to glorify man and Hellenism, but God used it to glorify himself. Maybe half or so of the book of Acts takes place here in Caesarea. Early church was here, and so where Paul was in prison for 2 years in this palace here, and also where a lot of the disciples went out to spread the gospel to Asia, left from this harbor. So God used it for his own glory. So this is part of the aqueduct that Herod had built to bring water from Mount Carmel all the way down to Caesarea. This is part of it that's been uncovered. It's a beach area right now, so you can see people sitting in it because it's right along the Mediterranean. This is part of Hezekiah's wall. So we're by the western wall.
I know, I just
want to go around there and welcoming in Shabbat. Big crowd or whatever. Just went through a security checkpoint. Very cool. This would have been Jerusalem kind of during Jesus' time. This kind of section was where visiting royalty would have probably had their places. This is the Temple Mount. This little section is called David's City. That's where when David lived there, this was the part that was used. And probably up in here would have been somewhere where David had his palace. And this was these entrances here was where people would have gone up from the south into the mount. And then there's another gate, Robinson's Gate, I think that they might have used as well. This gate over here with the bridge is actually where the priest would have gone in. And this is the part that's left of the western wall. That's the only part that's left where we were last night. And this is kind of so this is David's City again. This is the lower city would have been like middle class, and then the upper city up here would have been more like the pre-Sadducees especially, and they would have gone in again down. They had their own little bridge that would go into the temple, so they didn't want to go in with the rest of everybody else. And back here, this part back here would not have been walled. This is the new city. It would not have been walled during Jesus' time. It was walled in 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. It was walled by then, but it was not walled at Jesus' time. This is where they think the crucifixion took place, so it would have been just outside the city wall. And so we'll be there soon too. And then you have it's protected on this side by the Hinnon Valley, which will be here. And this is the Kidron Valley. So this is looking from the west. This would have been Herod's palace. This is where the Magi would have come. And it's in the upper part of the upper district there. And Caiaphas' house would have been over here.
Yeah, at first I did too.
Just outside in this new city. This is where they think that Jesus would have been crucified. And then the garden tomb would have been kind of over this way. This would be the royal store where they had the buying and selling, and where they had their lambs and everything ready. And this would have been the house, which was actually the synagogue itself, temple itself, and then this was a fortress on the one side of the Temple Mount. So we're at the Herodian, just outside of Bethlehem. Actually, this is the Herodian, which would have been another one of Herod the Great's palaces. And this we're staying in is his swimming pool. Again, it's huge.
What do you say, Joel? Oh.
Keeps going over that way. So this is the Herodian mountain. They actually took part of the mountain and made it higher, so we could be higher up. Okay, so where you can see the three towers, that's Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And then over this way, that kind of reddish topped building on the horizon, that is Bethlehem. So it's about 6 miles away. This is in Bethlehem, maybe what a shepherd's grotto area would look like. So it's cool. And the ground, this one's clean, but it wouldn't have always been. Stabilized area, we're all underground here. We're walking down Wilson's Arch. This was the way that led from the new city into the temple that the rabbis would have taken.
This is what Jesus and the disciples saw and touched. You came in under Wilson's Arch, and the best way to take a picture is kind of as we spread out going this way, you kind of get a sense. But look at the size of these stones.
300 tons. What I heard for one of the largest.
650 was the largest one, metric ton. No one at the time could figure out how they moved these into place. And look at the design, okay? This is 2,000 years old. You don't see this anywhere else. You got to come down into the tunnels. There you get a little glimpse of it. Some of you were asking yesterday at the wall, or the day before, excuse me, how much of that's original. Well, we had to come down here because the pool set up above, and I said earlier, not one stone will be left on another. Well, up on top, they were thrown down. We have secondary use. Down here, this is original. Okay? So it's amazing and it's cool, and the archways you've been coming through are all underneath. There's a design around each of the stones called a margin and Baas design that you can see cut out right here behind me. Okay, that's Herod engineering, and they say that even the stones that are unseen, that are still a little bit down and form foundation, are all cut and shaped exactly right to fit and to be designed. Even those stones that are not seen. You are living stones being built into a spiritual house, says Peter. Some of us are stones that are underneath, or some, the foundational stones, some of those people that are in our heritage that are unseen and yet hold us up. And just remember, the ones unseen are as important as the ones that are seen. The common people to remain clean. So original arch, original steps, filled in behind by the Muslims, as we talked about, and as the Israelis or the archaeology or the Jews to try to get in underneath and find out what's there. Muslims figure it out. So up above they filled all this in with concrete so that to stop the excavations going on underneath from this side. So you've got that constant tension under here about who controls it. We control up above, therefore we control down below, and you can't excavate, so we're going to block you with concrete. Okay? All right. Let's catch up with the group.
These were the original steps. So this is the cistern that was used in the fortress that was connected to the temple. The north part, and there's above there will be the road, and we would have a lot of people here in this fortress, a lot of legions. This probably was possibly the house of Caiaphas, who was the high priest at the time. And this area here would have been the courtyard. And if it is the house of Caiaphas, this would have been the courtyard where Peter denied Jesus. And then leading up here is a big reception room. It would have gone all the way across. And mosaics on the floor and plaster on the walls. And these would have been the Sadducees, who Jesus was constantly talking with and telling them that they were not doing things the right way. They were agreeing with Hellenism and liked money and weren't really caring for the poor and shepherding God's people as God had told them. And just cool. So as we're waiting to go into Hezekiah's tunnel, this tunnel down area is actually the Kidron Valley that went down next to the
The pool, of course, before we go up. You can walk down to it a little bit more too if you need to. It's kind of, I think, one direction from here, so we should be safe.
Cool. So we just came through this tunnel, which was just opened like 6 months ago. It was the like a secret passage even during Herodian time, and this is part of the Western Wall again. Then I guess, and over here was the Robinson's Arch.
I like the walk.
Cool. So this is the other side of the Western Wall. And when we're standing on ground level, they said it's probably about the second level down. That's kind of street level up where we were on the other side. And then here, you can see there, and that is where the archway and the steps would have come down, and it would have come down and then connected here. This would have been Robinson's Arch. So this is the foundation of Robinson's Arch down here. And this is the road from Jesus' time, first century road. This is the had the horn of the house of the blowing. It might have been the pinnacle spot where they blew the shofar. So these are the cypress trees.
We were at the
So these are the southern steps that would have led up to one of the main people's entrance to the temple. So Jesus and his disciples would have come up these steps. The entrances are blocked off now, but the steps were uneven because you had to kind of stop and think as you were walking. And they would a lot of times say the Psalms of Ascent during this time. This is also the where Acts 2 took place, where the Holy Spirit came. Because they were up going to the house, which was the house of God, at 9 o'clock, which was when the sacrifice time. And they would have been sitting out here teaching on the steps when the wind and fire came. So this is basically where the early church started, and where they 3,000 people believed and were probably baptized. There's some mikvahs down below. They've uncovered at least 40 mikvahs in their excavating of this. So they would have probably baptized the people just in those mikvahs. This is also, that day then was also when God changed his residence from being in the temple to now living in our hearts. So this is standing on the southern steps, and up here is the Mount of Olives. So these are actually reproductions. These would have been the archways where they entered. Their real archways are down below because we're above where they entered, but they're very tall. So we're looking out over the full moon, the super moon, I guess, of the year, and over Jerusalem. There's Jerusalem at night. Beautiful. Very pretty. So we're this is looking up at the crucifixion area there where that church is. And we're actually in Temple Mount. This is possibly where they think the Ark of the Covenant used to be, which would have been right in line there. But it would have been way down underneath. All of this is redone. And there's the Muslim mosque. So we're on the Temple Mount spot. So somewhere in here was where Jesus worshipped, but this has been destroyed and rebuilt lots of times. So this is from the temple side, or the Temple Mount side, the eastern gate, this is a remodel of it. It's underneath the one Jesus had, but this is where Jesus is said to come back. So where we just sang with St. Anne's Church, just off the Temple Mount. So this is right next to St. Anne's Church, which is just off the Temple Mount, and this is the pool of Bethesda, where the sick and invalid would go. When the waters would swirl, they'd try to jump in. But Jesus healed a man here, and he went up into the temple and started telling everybody about it. So he's going up to the Mount of Olives and down in Jerusalem. There's the Temple out, and this is the East Gate, and some cemeteries right in front of it. And then the Jewish cemeteries on the other side of the Kidron. So standing on the Mount of Olives, and this is the whole Temple Mount here. And then just beyond those kind of gray dome area is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's where I think the crucifixion took place. These are ossuary boxes, so when they had people in the tombs, they would leave them there for a few years, but then they'd come and take the bones and put them in these boxes after a few years of being in the tomb. This is the traditional site of where they think Jesus came and cried overlooking the city of Jerusalem. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where they think the crucifixion might have taken place. So this is another possibility of where Jesus was crucified, Golgotha. It would have been, this was a place of Jewish execution at the time. They do stonings. When the Romans came by, it was by a major road. And probably the mouth, looked like a skull with eyes and nose there. The mouth's been filled in because they put a bus station down here.
It's below ground. Yeah, quite a bit too, isn't it?
So I originally made those highlights just so I kind of knew what I was looking at on my trip to Israel, but thought maybe you might enjoy watching them too, so hope that you did. Thanks. Bye.